Welcome to the MMA strategy show for UFC 248. I am Jason Floyd, veteran MMA reporter. That is the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Pete, as always, man, I appreciate the chance to talk a little MMA with you. So how's things going, man?
Things are going great. Super excited to get this show on the road. Very thankful for Osmo for having us be a part of their channel. We're extremely excited to provide content for you guys out there. We've been doing this a long time, so it's very exciting to get out there and touch a new fan base for sure.
And of course, I've been covering the sport for just over a decade now, started back in 2009. Actually, and we kind of tell the story. The way me and Pete actually met was I was doing statistics on Bellator. And Pete, I don't know if you still have the fastest knockout in featherweight history. Pete emails me just out of the blue. And then that's kind of how this relationship started. And about a year ago, I said, "Hey, Pete, you want to do a DFS show together?" That's kind of how this thing started. And so, Pete offers a fighter's perspective on these fights to help you when you're building your lineups. Because we talk about roster construction a lot about how you're building your roster. And when you look at UFC 248, which is a solid fight card, top to bottom, Pete, you look at those two title fights. And I think that's where we should start here is can you build a lineup without those title fights?
Oof, that's a tough call, and each week we're trying to see if you can avoid that main card, that main bout. But when it comes to this week, I really feel like that's a bold take to avoid the two 5 round fights. You'd really have to bank on everything going in your favor. And for me, I don't feel comfortable with that strategy. I do think that you have to have both fighters, one fighter from each of the fights in your lineup to cash. I think that's a safer approach. I mean, if you really want to be extremely bold and contrarian, you can definitely avoid both of the title fights. But, you know, with the longer the rounds go and the longer the fight goes, the more points that are going to accumulate, the more significant strikes, the transitions, takedowns. So somebody like Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington, I always bring them up. They have such a high point total because of the long duration of the bout, their high volume, and their takedown ferocity. So definitely plug both fighters in this week for sure.
And when you look at the main event, middleweight title on the line, Israel Adesanya making his first title defense. He's priced at 9,200, taking on Yoel Romero at 7,000. Of course, initially what the UFC wanted to do was Paulo Costa this spot, but injury related. So Israel Adesanya didn't want to sit on the sideline. He wanted to finish his title. And, Pete, as a fighter, I mean, you have to commend him here because he said, "Give me the guy no one wants to fight." Even though Yoel has lost 2 fights in a row, the Paulo Costa fight, a very close fight. If that fight is a 5 round fight, to me, I think there's no question that Yoel would have ultimately won the fight. To me, when I'm breaking down this fight, and obviously I'll defer to you, but kind of here's my thoughts:
Mhm.
is Israel's got to stay long. He's got to be that rangy fighter, use that reach advantage that he does have in the fight. On Yoel Romero's side, he's got to close that distance. And will Yoel use his wrestling? If he uses his wrestling, that 7,000 price tag to me is someone that I'm looking at because we both like to do multiple lineups.
Mhm.
To me, I'm going to have at least one lineup with Yoel Romero and another lineup with Israel Adesanya.
Yeah, I mean, this fight with Yoel Romero coming in at 7,000, that's almost bare minimum salary. You're talking about an extreme value on somebody who can finish the fight at any moment, but also get you a ton of points, even in losses. So I think that he's not a bad punt play for sure at 7,000. You could do worse. But for me, I'll be back in Israel Adesanya. When it comes to Adesanya, he's an unbelievable striker, very long, rangy, excellent hands, great kicks, unbelievable combinations, and also good defensive movement. And I think that's going to be the difference in this fight. It's going to be the footwork and the head movement of Israel Adesanya being able to evade Yoel Romero's big blitzes. And Yoel will take, defend, and then just start going crazy towards his opponents. But I think with somebody as smart and as crafty as Adesanya, he could run into some problems here. So at 9,200, give me Israel Adesanya. I know it's a safe call. I don't know if he gets the finish over y'all, Romero, but I mean, plugging him in your lineup, you could also be looking at a high point total because of significant strikes and maybe a few knockdowns. So 9,200, I think, is pretty safe.
If this is a 25-minute fight, I
Yep.
do look at Yoel Romero as that punt play because if he goes out and loses and it's a 25-minute fight, he might still score 70, 75 points, that 7,000 price range, that's going to be something you're going to look at. By the way, if you're watching us live, you want to ask a question, leave it in the chat, and myself and P will answer your question. If Yoel, if he does get the fight to the ground, let's say he gets a takedown in the first round, gets a takedown in the second round, how much effect will that have on Israel in a third, fourth, and fifth round? Now, obviously, the gym that Israel trains at, City Kickboxing, they brought in the high level wrestlers to get Israel, ready for this fight. I mean, obviously, when you look at who he's fought in his relatively quick run to the title here in the UFC, you look at someone like a Brad Tavares, which I remember when that fight was booked, people were like, "Oh, this is too steep of competition." And then he just passed it with flying colors, and of course, we saw what he did to Robert Whitaker, and going back and watching that fight, because we have so many fights that we're always watching, you kind of forget about how great Israel looked in that fight. And the
Mm-hmm.
fact of dropping him there at the end of the round, and of course, next round comes out and finishes it. I mean, you could say that Robert Whitaker was saved by the bell. I mean, and Israel's to me, he's a special fighter.
Yeah.
Kudos for him for taking this fight here. But I think he does have to stay away from those quick strikes that we've seen Yoel land. You think about the Chris Weidman fight where he landed that knee that just folded Chris Weidman. Then you think about the fight against Lyoto Machida when they had that fight night card down in South
Yeah.
Florida where he just out of nowhere shot out. So to me, that's what Israel and his camp has to be concerned with.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that Yoel Romero's style won't really pose too many problems for Israel if he stays striking. And I think the reason behind that is I think that Kelvin Gastelum was a more crisp striker, throws better combinations than Yoel Romero. Romero is very wild and loopy, and I don't really see Israel getting caught with too many loopy shots. If Yoel decides to go the grappling route, that could really put Adesanya in unfamiliar territory where, he may look like a fish out of water on his back. And, we have seen him have good takedown defense against the cage, but what about the open mat defense? And what about if he is on bottom with Yoel Romero on top of him? But with that being said, every takedown that Yoel Romero shoots for and he doesn't get that's a big expenditure of energy. So how's his cardio going to be? He's usually a machine and keeps going and just can never stop. But you have to wonder, that's going to be somewhat taxing. And whenever you're receiving a lot of damage, you're going to be more fatigued than normal anyways. So I think Israel's going to be able to piece him up at distance and be crisp and get it done in a great title defense for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at paying off that 9,200 price tag. I think even if it goes 25 minutes, you got to feel pretty good. Even if it goes in, that you're going to get that value that you want. Of course, the other title fight is in the co-main event, as you got Wei Li Zhong making her first title defense. She's priced at 8,900, taking on the former champion Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who's priced at 7,300. You think about Wei Li in her last fight when she won the title. She was a betting underdog.
Yes.
She was, I want to say she was priced 73, 74, 75, somewhere in there. And then, of course, she goes out there and just starches Jessica Andrade in 42 seconds. And now one of the interesting things about her for this fight camp is the effect of the coronavirus has had on her. The fact of she had to, the UFC calls her up, several weeks ago and says, we got to get you out of China. They get her to Thailand. Then she goes Thailand to Abu Dhabi, and then Abu Dhabi to Vegas, where she's been for about, the past 2 weeks. Then on the other side of the equation, watching the countdown show, Joanna really pointing towards life outside of fighting, of how that's had an effect. And I know you can talk about that of, we always point to how you perform in the cage, and we make these, these assumptions about you, but you're a normal person. You're just like anybody else that has issues going on in your personal life.
Yeah, that's very true. There's a lot of factors that go into a fight, and outside influences or distractions definitely take a toll on your body. So you would have to imagine that Wei Li Zhang in this situation, she's probably a little tired and a little frustrated with everything that's going on. And, it's things outside of her control, but still it does have an effect on you. Having to move camps and be on the road so much rather than being just in a stable camp like where Joanna is at American Top Team. The best coaches are surrounding her all the time. As far as Joanna's personal life, personal relationships and everything, they do take a toll on your body as well, and they could be distractions. I wouldn't necessarily know if I would chalk all of her losses up to that, though, and I feel like that's kind of what they were alluding to. But with Joanna, going up against Wei Li Zhong. It's crazy to think that Joanna is the underdog here because of her rise and her legacy and how dominant she was. So it's a very interesting fight, and I can't wait to hear your breakdown with it. But I'm very excited. I think I'm more excited about the co-main event than the main event, and that's because I think the main event's going to be Israel Adesanya from bell to bell.
Man, I don't know if I favor one over the other because I love
Yeah,
both fights. I mean,
yeah,
I think when you look at the UFC in 2020, it's been about we've had a really solid main event. And then the rest of the card, you're like, okay, there's a fight here I like, fire
true,
there.
true.
I mean, I think about to the Connor pay-per-view in January. You were all excited about Connor Cerrone, but after that, you're kind of like I remember being out watching the fight and the co-main event's on, and like no one in the bar is paying
Yeah,
attention. I mean,
yeah.
everyone's just, but then once, of course, Connor makes the walk, everyone is eyes good there. Um, the one thing about Joanna, and also you should mention about Yoel is we got to watch on Friday at the weigh-ins because
True.
obviously Yoel has had issues where he's missed weight for a title fight.
Hmm.
Joanna Jędrzejczyk is she's had the issues. You think back, there was that video just basically where she had to do everything she could to make weight for a title fight back in New York a couple of years ago. And then I remember, last year in October here in my hometown of Tampa, she was in the main event against Michelle Waterson. And I remember that week I was heading to London, and I think it was like Tuesday. I was at the Fire Hotel doing some interviews, and I remember I saw Joanna, and there's all these reports about, hey, she may not make weight. I walked by her. She looked normal, didn't look like a fighter who is stressed. But that is something you have to pay attention to. And you also have to look at the weigh and say, hey, did someone have, don't look at the ceremonial weigh-ins because at that point they've already had 8 hours to rehydrate. You got to
Hmm.
look at those morning weigh-ins of what do they look like? Is it a tough cut? Um, this is one I have a feeling we're going to disagree on this fight.
All right.
To me, I think Wei Li's going to get a stoppage here. And I think it happens within the first 10 minutes. But I do think if this fight makes it to the championship rounds, I do believe it is an advantage to Joanna Champion.
Yeah, you wanted to. I would totally agree with that. And you know, I was back in Wei Li Zhang big time until I started to really think about the coronavirus and her whole camp being moved multiple times. And then I started thinking about Joanna's camp coming from American Top Team, great coaches. Mike Brown's really helped her career out and shaped her career into where it is now. Um, and then I started watching some film. And the more I watch film, Wei Li Zhang, she's crisp. She looks amazing on pads. If you were just going basing your opinion on pad work, then you would definitely assume that Wei Li Zhang's going to go out there and smoke Joanna. But guess what? It's not pads, and it's an actual MMA fight. And there's a lot more that goes into a fight than just pad work. So when I started actually watching tape, I noticed that Wei Li Zhang has a lot of tendencies. So she throws a lot of inside leg kicks, and so does Joanna. But she was missing a lot against Tisha Torres, and Tisha Torres isn't the best striker. She's pretty decent overall, but I think that Joanna can really expose that outside leg of Wei Li Zhang and start lighting that leg up. Yes, Wei Li Zhang has a great Sana background and good Chinese kickboxing where she can, work in her fancy kicks, her side kicks, her good strong combinations. But I did notice she started to taper off anytime that there was a clinch. So I watched Joanna's fights. I saw how crisp she was. She throws great combinations, ends things with leg kicks, and I feel like she just doesn't go away. Like Rose Namajunas put her away. But besides that, like Joanna's there, and she's going to be there for 5 rounds. And in a fight where I think that I saw Wei Li Zhang start to taper off in round 1. Round 2 was even worse, and in round 3, yes, she was still in the fight and fighting, but I noticed that she didn't have the same energy. So for me, I'm going to back Joanna, and it's a great value. And I do like her value here. And to have somebody that's dominated the division, and I know it's her return at 115, have to pay attention to the weigh-ins, but at 7,300 for a high volume striker, I mean, that's a lot of points and significant strikes if she has a high output. I like her here. And I think that the hype might be a little too much, and everybody's going to be back in Wei Li Zhang. And I think that people might have forgotten how good Joanna is at 7,300. So I'm back in Joanna.
But here's the question I have about Joanna.
Mhm.
Has the division caught up to her
It's true.
and potentially passed her?
She might have lost a step. I mean, she really might have lost a step since the Rose Namajunas fight for sure. Um, I don't know if she's lost quite a step where she's just irrelevant within the division. I do expect Wei Li Zhang to have multiple moments of success. I think that she'll probably win a round or two. But as the longer the fight goes, I really think Joanna could run away with this, especially with the volume. And I see Wei Li Zhang getting tired against Tisha Torres, and she wasn't absorbing damage. What happens when she gets hit by Joanna and gets leg kicked, and she's not too good on her feet and good at evading shots because Joanna's in her face? So for me, I totally understand the Wei Li Zhang pick, but I'm going to find the value in Joanna at 7,300. I'm going to hope for the best.
Yeah, I'm a little different than you. For me, I'm looking at Wei Li, but because I do believe she has a power advantage in the
Mhm.
fight. The speed advantage, I mean, look, and you pointed it out. You necessarily can't look at hitting pads to basically see what it is, but
True.
I definitely think the power is on Wei Li's side.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The power's there. I think that Joanna's good at getting out of the way of shots. I think all that leads us to a good little break right here where we can talk about Super Draft, and it's an app that I really like. I downloaded it. It's the future of daily fantasy sports. Experience Super Draft's exclusive game mode, the multiplier. Say goodbye to salary restrictions and hello to lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge and Osmo's free super draft projections today to draft any player you want, build your very own dream team. If you want all the best guys on your lineups, you can draft them. But there's multipliers attached to people. So sometimes it's good to pay up for people or to find the cheaper person with the higher multiplier. Countless lineup possibilities let you experience daily fantasy sports the way you want. Superdraft offers contests for NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, and PGA, so you can enjoy the best of DFS all year round. Sign up for Superdraft today using promo code AWESOMO and claim your free $20 in super cash with your first deposit of $100 or more. You can download in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. Superdraft, no limits, more winning. And I'll definitely be doing some Superdraft tomorrow for sure.
And of course, getting back to the fights, there's a lightweight matchup right before these title fights, and that's Beneil Dariush, 8,700, taking on Drakkar Klose at 7,500. Drakkar Klose is a guy I've had a chance to talk to on multiple occasions. He is someone that used to train out of the lab
Mhm.
there in Arizona, most notably known for the home of Benson Anderson. Benson's actually a part owner of that gym. He's made the move over to Fight Ready. There's been a couple of guys that have left the lab and gone over to Fight Ready. Fight Ready, most notably known as the gym of Henry Cejudo. Of course, I think everyone kind of knows who Henry Cejudo is at this point. But when I look at this fight, to me, it's about Drakkar Klose. I just don't think you can use your wrestling in this matchup to try to take the fight to the ground, because then you're getting into Beneil Dariush's world, who very quietly has put together a nice win streak.
Yeah, I don't see Drakkar Close looking to get it to the mat because then you're just really welcoming the threat of Beneil Dariush. Dariush is an unbelievable grappler. His accolades in jiu-jitsu are crazy. He's just so dominant in that area where I really feel like he can go on a tear in this division, and especially if he can get people to where he's comfortable instead of trying to be a striker. I know that he's from King's MMA and he has a great coach in Rafael Cordero, but Beneil Dariush can really just run through this whole division. And I would love to see a grapplers matchup one day of him and Khabib because I feel like he can go on that type of tear. He represents the jujitsu problem and where he's just constantly threatening, good ground and pound as well, but great submission skills. I like Beneil Dariush here at 8,700. I think that he could, get it to the mat, get some takedowns, and possibly get a submission over Jakar Close at 7,500.
At the end of the show, we're going to go break down our tiers where we break this card into four tiers. Tier 1, 9,000, tier 2, 8, tier 3 is 7K, and then of course tier 4, 6K, which is only one option this week. And this is one of those cards where I mean, you got to look at those mid 8K range fighters and high 8K range fighters. We talked about Wei Li in the last fight at 8,900. Look at Beneil Dariush at 8,700. I do feel that if you take Beneil Dariush, you feel pretty confident that he can go down there and get the fish. Now, if I'm going to play the other side of this, is what if Beneil cannot get the fight to the ground? How does he win?
In that situation, I really don't feel like he's a bad striker. I don't. I think that he has a good foundation. He has a good coach. He's also surrounded by studs. Like that whole gym is just loaded with talented fighters. They spar pretty hard, but they have great fighters in different styles all around. Whereas somebody like Jakar Close, I feel like is pretty easy to emulate. I don't really feel like he does anything too tricky. He's pretty basic. Good boxing, good wrestling usually. But if it's just a stand-up battle, I actually like Beneil's chances even in that. I mean, his striking defense is always worrisome, where he could get caught with a big shot, especially if it's some power shot that Drakkar Klose is throwing when he's in the clinch. But as far as his fight, I really feel like it's Beneil's fight to lose, and I feel like he'd have to really get unlucky and get caught with something to lose this bout.
Yeah, when you look at the projections on Awesemo.com, Beneil Dariush is odds of winning is 61%, which is based on obviously looking at the betting odds. 33% chance of getting a finish in this fight. I think those are pretty odds that I definitely agree with
Yeah.
in terms of the finish. I mean, I think the only fear you have, and especially when you take those high 8K options,
Hmm.
is what happens if they don't get the finish. Like we can point to last week. I had Luis Pena didn't go out there and get the finish. I think I want to say he was priced at 9,200. That didn't pay off. So that's kind of that you got to be concerned with is what happens if Beneil doesn't get the stoppage.
Yeah, I mean, going up against Jakar Close, he's super tough where he could possibly keep getting back to his feet. But in that situation, Beneil could just be, continue taking him down or, transitioning to different positions, spinning behind him, taking his back, attempting submissions, then working sweeps. So it's also sometimes good for somebody's opponent to survive because then you're just racking up points, especially if your fighter's a grappler. Like DraftKings favors quick finishes and grapplers. So you want to hunt the card and look for people that are known for quick finishes, known to have either high volume or they're such a dominant grappler that they can really rack up these points and start, their score starts shooting up like crazy. And I think Beneil Dariush is one of the people on this card that I think has potential to break the slate for sure.
Yeah, you think a couple weeks ago, Merab Dvalishvili, who scored 10
Oh,
takedowns
I know.
against Casey Kenny, I want to say his score was 130,
Something.
135 range. When you can get someone in that range, and if you're playing in that big GPP,
Mhm.
which this week is $15 and 50K to first place, look, you're going to have that fighter in your lineup. It's
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's like the other night NBA. You had to have Curtis LeVert in your lineup. If he wasn't in your lineup, you weren't winning.
I'm a Brooklyn fan, and I did not even take him. So, fading Levert that night it was tough. I was happy he pulled off the nice 50 burger, but yeah, it was very unfortunate I didn't have him.
Prior to that, we've got the return of Neil Magny, 7,600, taking on Lee John Ling, 8,600. John Ling's put together a very quietly nice little win streak here. Neil Magny, we have not seen him an 18-month injury situation, USADA situation. So he's coming back. I mean, this is one of those fights where, to me, I kind of relate to the main event in a way. Is
Mhm.
will Neil Magny be able to use his grappling? One of the things about Neil is he's long, but you think Jialing, he can finish you. So to me, it's about can he get takedowns? If he can get takedowns, to me, would be at 7,600. He's got to be a guy you would look at.
Yeah, I think Neil Magny's in the conversation for being a nice value at 7,600. It all depends on his game plan, and it's his range. I mean, he has such a crazy reach over most of the division. He's huge. He's very lanky, so it's not like he's some big muscular guy. But him being so lanky is to his advantage, where he can pump out jabs and stay at the end of his punches. Where if he goes that route of keeping Jing Liang away from him, I think that he could actually dance around him, score some good shots, and then when Jing Liang gets a little too aggressive, he can duck under for a takedown because you already know that Jing Liang is going to be throwing hooks with bad intentions, trying to finish the fight. I do think that Jing Liang at 8,600 is priced because of his finishing ability. He goes out there and he really puts it on his opponents. He's faced some high quality opponents. Just had a finish over Dos Santos, which is crazy. At 8,600, he definitely can put combinations together. But I think the safe play in here is thinking that Jing Liang's going to go out there and get it done. Magny's been away from the sport for quite some time now, and Jing Liang's on a tear. I will have a few lineups with Neil Magny in case he does really pepper him with his jab and start to get some takedowns and everything. I don't expect him to get a finish, but the upside is somewhat there at 7,600.
Yeah, when you look over at the projections on awesemo.com, for Li Jialing, 63% chance of winning, 40% chance of winning by stoppage for No Magny, a 13% chance of winning by stoppage. I think if Neil wins, I don't think it's by stoppage. I think it would be a decision.
Mhm.
But if you're looking to save some salary, I don't know if this is the fight that I would point towards of trying to save salary on, just
Mhm.
because I would just be fear that if Neil it does get a win, I think it's a decision win. And are we only looking at what's the ceiling?
Right.
85 points, maybe 90
If
points.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough fight for him to win. Let's be real. He comes from a camp that I usually always back, and you know this. I like Team Elevation. I really always back them, and he trains at Elevation. He's going to be in great shape. But let me talk about cage time. You haven't been in a cage for a little bit. The lights do affect you. Being away, a little bit of cage rust, ring rust. That's real. It really is. The longer you are away from the game, the harder it is to come back for sure. And especially going up against a guy who's been on a tear in Jing Liang, it's a tough test. If he goes out there and stops Jing Liang or gets a W over him, that's crazy. That'd be a big welcome back to Neil Magny, but I just don't see it happening.
So don't talk to Dominic Cruz because he's going to tell you
I know he
it's
doesn't
all
believe in it.
mental.
But listen, Dominic Cruz is a special breed. I mean, let's be real. He was a former champion, and his style is just unbelievable where his movement, he can evade shots, his takedowns. He's hard to train for no matter how long you're facing or you know what I mean? Like you can't really emulate his style in a training camp. So he's the exception to the rule.
So if I walked into a place, let's say I walk into an MMA gym tonight. There's
Yep.
20 fighters on the mat. And
Mhm.
I asked these 20 fighters ago, is cage rust real? How many of them say yes?
I don't know. It's probably going to be split, but I tell you what, the seasoned guys will probably say yes, it is, and the guys that are up and coming that really haven't really experienced that adversity are probably going to say, "Nah, I don't believe in that." But that's why you have to try to stay active, whether it's grappling tournaments or being around the game, or even cornering your teammates and whatnot. Just being around the game, and a year and a half layoff going up against Jing Liang, that's a tough task, and I'm going to avoid that fight for the most part, and I'll have Jing Liang in some lineups.
The opening fight of the pay-per-view is Alex Cowboy Oliveira, 8,400. He takes on Max Griffin at
Mhm.
7,800. Both these guys need to win here.
Yes, I do.
Cowboy Oliveira, he's a fun fighter to watch. You don't necessarily think of a Cowboy Oliveira fight and think that it's going to be a boring fight. But Max Griffin, and we were talking before the show here, 7,800. When you're looking at those under 8K options, I think he's someone to look at.
Mhm.
Especially if you think he can get. I think it's a decision win. Maybe he gets a late stoppage in the fight to where he can really maximize those points. But I think he's a guy you got to look at.
Yeah, I like this fight, and I'm very intrigued with this matchup. Every time Alex Oliveira's in a fight, I like to tune in. Ever since he fought my buddy Cowboy Cerrone, I've always kind of followed his career, and it's been a lot of ups and downs. But Alex Oliveira, 8,400, he does have potential. He has great takedowns. The thing is he's a little reckless, and as talented as he is, whether it's striking or grappling, his recklessness leaves him open for big shots, big strikes, but also reversals. So like in a lot of his fights, you'll notice he'll have a great position and then get a little careless or get tired, and his opponent will reverse him. So at 8,400, I think on paper this looks like this should be an Alex Oliveira, let's get you back in the win column type of fight. I think it's tougher than that. I do. And Max Griffin at 7,800, I like Max Griffin. And the reason I like Max Griffin is he can push that pace. And I've seen Alex Oliveira really fade in fights. And it's not only his cardio, but it seems to be like his heart's a little bit in question. Like when the going gets tough, Alex Oliveira kind of folds a little bit. So whether that pressure, and I think Max Griffin can really pressure him, whether it's grappling or even striking, he can chain together a lot of takedowns and get you a decent point total at 7,800. So that would be a nice pivot from Neil Magny at 7,600. I think Neil Magny might be, decently popular, and I think that I could pivot a little bit to Max Griffin at 7,800. And I don't think that people are really going to look that route, and they're going to think Alex Oliveira goes out there and gets it done. So Griffin for me.
Yeah, I think it's also for me probably a fight I ultimately stay away from. When
Yeah.
I was earlier today, I was putting together multiple lineups. It was never a fight that I really looked at either guy. Definitely not. I'd never looked at Alex Oliveira. Max Griffin was like, okay, 7,800, because I'm looking at those high 7,000 fighters. He's someone up there. It's just Max of who has that higher ceiling. When you look at the ESPN prelims, there are some names I think people are going to recognize.
Yeah.
Most notably, Sean O'Malley, 9,100, taking on Jose Alberto Quinones at 7,100. I think it's going to be almost 2 years to the date
It's
from Sean
crazy.
O'Malley's last fight. Obviously, there's been the USADA issues, injury issues that he has had, but finally getting back in there. One of the things I really noticed, I want to say it was on Embedded this week. You look at Sean O'Malley, he looks shredded. You could definitely tell these 2 years off is you see, a fighter. Obviously, we saw him very young on the Contender Series,
Oh yeah.
and you see how that body is developing. And he's someone that you have to pay attention to. There's a reason he's salary at 9,100, big betting favorite on the card. I think he's going to be very popular. So maybe he could be a guy that maybe you try to stay away from just because of a high percentage owned. But I think there's a really high chance that if he doesn't get a stoppage in the first round, it happens in the second round.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think he's probably the most popular play outside of Israel Adesanya, and I think that's because he's a household name. And it's crazy to think that a guy from the Contender Series is now a household name. But Sean O'Malley, I think this is a showcase fight for him. I think this is a welcome back, Sean O'Malley. Let's give you a guy that matches up nice with your style, and go out there and light him up. And I think Sean at 9,100, I'm actually surprised his salary is not higher, to be honest. And I think there's so much hype behind him, but for good reason. He's got excellent striking, and I feel like he's made big changes in his grappling as well. I think that he could get a finish even on the mat. I think that his frame is just going to be too much for a lot of these guys in this division at 135. Against Canonia, he can really push him back, light him up with good hand combinations, good kicks, fancy kicks. His footwork's crazy. I guarantee Canonia is going to be looking to take this to the mat, and he's probably going to get guillotined or kneed or lit up in the process. So Sean O'Malley is a very, very safe play, probably my safest play on the card. I'm plugging him in most of my lineups. I will definitely fade him in one, just to get a little contrarian and try to avoid that ownership percentage, because he's going to come in pretty heavily owned.
I love how showcase fight is finally in your vocabulary. I'm glad I've
True.
taught you something.
It's true though. I mean, like, you could definitely see, like, through the mind of a matchmaker of how they think about things. And you know, he's a good fighter, but Sean O'Malley's their guy. He's their next exciting guy for the lightweights. The guys that are under 155. So at 135 pounds, Sean O'Malley should really run through a lot of these guys in this division.
Yeah, I definitely expect that there. One of the fighters I really like on this fight card is Mark Madsen. He's priced at 9,000, taking on Austin Hubbard at 7,200. He is an older, but the accomplishments that this man has as a wrestler, silver medalist in the Olympics. Look, the path to victory is very clear for him. You just hope that this isn't a situation where maybe his team says, "Hey, let's get some mat time in. Let's work on the striking game." You just like, as a backer of Mark Madsen, which I will be here on Saturday, it is Mark, get in there, take this dude to the ground, give me some takedowns, and ultimately get that stoppage win. But to me, I think he's a fairly safe option. But I know you can talk about this. Is if you want to have any fear of that, is what happens if that stoppage doesn't come.
Yeah, I think Mark Madsen might be one of the most overlooked 9,000 options, even though that he's had great success. A guy coming up we'll get to, and Vieira is probably going to be one of the safest plays. But when it comes to Madsen, he has such a great wrestling background where he's such a powerful guy, great tosses, good throws, good takedowns, and really imposes his will on his opponents. So he takes people down and lays down heavy ground and pound. And we saw it in his last bout where he gets a lot of quick finishes. And going up against a guy in Austin Hubbard who just fought Davi Ramos. Austin Hubbard's from Team Elevation. So it's a team that I like. So it's hard for me to pick against Team Elevation all the time. I do, however, think that Mark Madsen gets it done. I just feel like Austin Hubbard might be well prepared. Like everybody from Team Elevation, they have great coaching staff, great training partners. They also train at Elevation, so they can really keep that motor running. Austin Hubbard did get taken down by Davi Ramos and controlled on the ground, so there's that worry. But say Mark Madsen takes him down and controls him, but doesn't get a quick finish, and it's more of a stand-up fight than we believe. Then Austin Hubbard starts to come into the discussion of could he really squeak out the W? I will most likely say no, he doesn't get it done. But I'll probably take a GPP flyer on Austin Hubbard in one lineup in hopes that his coaching staff has him well prepared and he can squeak out a decision. You never know. I mean, every fight starts standing up, so he could land one lucky shot and get it done. So Mark Madsen at 9,000 is probably going to be, for me, one of the 9,000 options I'm not going to have in too many lineups.
Yeah, you mentioned about Fiera, who's priced at 9,300, taking on Safarov at 6,900. I mean, look, in terms of DraftKings, it's you take the favorite or you move on. I don't look. I'm sure Safarov will probably have like 5% ownership.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Okay, but I like if you are putting him in your lineup, this is you're throwing a dart at the dartboard. Like I love to play darts. Okay, that's just me just throwing a dart, hoping something goes that I hit what I'm trying to hit. I mean, it's just yeah. To me, this is take Vieira. There's a reason he's an 8-1 betting favorite in this fight. It would be a pretty massive upset if he doesn't get the win here. I think the only question you have in this is. Do you want to pay, 9,300 for him, or do you want to spend $100 less and get potentially Israel Adesanya, who might fight for 25 minutes?
Yeah, that's always a great discussion. And, the strategy when it comes to lineup construction for MMA builds is you basically can always think that the 9,000 options, they're somewhat safe plays, but it's how quickly they get it done. So they're not always necessarily bad plays. But like if Rodolfo Vieira doesn't get it done till round 3, maybe he doesn't cash at that price. Just like if you're paying up for James Harden and he goes out there and gets you 40 points or 45 points and he was like 12,000, that's really not a great score for his salary. But when it comes to this matchup against Safarov, he should be able to take Safarov down, even though Safarov has good, decent wrestling. The worry here is maybe Safarov keeps it on the feet. And can kind of negate the takedowns of Rodolfo Vieira. I don't see that happening. I see Rodolfo being able to take him down, do whatever he wants to him. We've seen Safarov get submitted before. So, I think that Vieira at 9,300 is as safe as they come to get a W. I don't know if it's a quick finish, but I do think he goes out there and gets a W.
Yeah, I mentioned about Luis Pena last week, and I just pulled it up. So he was priced at 9,200.
Yeah.
And to me, I felt pretty confident, taking on Steve Garcia, stepping up on short notice. Steve Garcia obviously had weigh-in issues in the past, fighting at 55. He's pretty much now a 45er. Luis Pena only got 52.5 points. Only had 27 significant strikes, 3 advances, and a decision win. So when you take those 9,000 options, that's the fear. The fear is what happens if you bring James Harden. That's a great aspect that you bring up when you have to pay up so much for him if he doesn't cash in. But to me, it's Vieira. A fight that might be popular in because of their pricing would be Gerald Meerschaert 7,900, Deron Wynn at 8,300. Deron Wynn, a protege of Daniel Cormier. Wrestling, is short for the weight class. He is. You looked at his first fight in the UFC against Spice Lee, didn't show any wrestling at all. It was all striking. But then his last fight, he did show the wrestling abilities. But this is one of those fights that I don't know if you necessarily want to go to the ground with Gerald Meerschaert because of his submission abilities.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, going up against Eric Spicely 2 fights ago, Eric Spicely he's now a black belt in jiu-jitsu, unbelievable on the ground. And you add Deron Wynn, who has all these wrestling accolades, and we talked about it, and we thought that the wrestling would be the difference maker, and he'd go out there and chain together tons of takedowns and top pressure and everything. But he chose to stand and bang and scored a ton of points based on significant strikes, which is pretty impressive. But going up against Gerald Meerschaert, it's kind of similar, matchup where Meerschaert's not the best, striker in the world, but he's crafty on the ground, and he has 42 fights under his belt. I mean, Meerschaert's 30-12, which is pretty crazy. But like when it hits the mat, he's able to scramble, reverse positions, threaten with chokes, threaten with submissions. So Deron Winn took down Darren Stewart in his last bout. I don't know if he goes back to the takedown well here. I don't know if he does. I mean, he could take anybody down at will, but if he takes them down, he wants to be, out of their guard. He wants to be inside control. He wants to spin around them and have their back and start really landing heavy ground and pound strikes. If he takes that approach where he takes people down and starts to get into better positions than just landing in full guard, I think that he has potential, in the 185-pound division. This is a tough fight for Deron Winn going up against a guy with 42 fights. I think Meerschaert's going to be extremely popular. At 7,900, everybody's looking for that 7,000 option that's going to bail him out. And I don't know if he does it. I really don't. I don't know if he can get a finish over Deron Winn. Granted, he has great chokes to threaten with, but I think Deron Winn can kind of like stifle any offense that Meerschaert has. Meerschaert had a nice body kick TKO, but that's not always going to come up. You know what I mean? And that's not always going to happen. So like these home run shots aren't going to happen. I'll usually take the volume guy over the home run hitter. And, give me that batting average guy besides the guy who's going to go up there and just slug 40 home runs.
Let me throw at you the odds of a stoppage for this one. Deron Winn, 21%. Gerald Meerschaert, 28%.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And I think that Meerschaert's resume speaks for itself. He goes out there and bails himself out. He gets into good positions where he can sneak in a choke, or his jiu-jitsu is so threatening in certain positions. That's why I think that Deron Winn would be wise to just keep it on the feet for a little bit. If you want to get some late takedowns at the end of the round to kind of really solidify that round for yourself, that'd be smart. But early in the rounds, stay away from Meerschaert on the ground.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one, and maybe something you play with in terms of putting one of those guys in your lineup. Now, a fight that I kind of feel like in terms of GPP, you might when we talk on Sunday morning, Pete, I feel like the winner of this fight potentially could be in the ultimate lineup of that big GPP, and that is Emily Wittmeyer and Polyana Viana, both priced at 8,100. There's every week there's fights that we talk about, and we're like, it was a heavyweight fight last week, Tybura and Spivak. We're like, okay, we don't feel good about either side in this one, but even though the fight ultimately did not deliver the way you wanted it to,
Right.
But I feel like, and look, it's a coin flip fight to me. I mean, you tell me I got to make a pick. I think it's Viana, but I don't feel good about it.
I don't either. And every single week we're faced with this dilemma of people that are similarly priced, and we know that it's going to be in the optimal lineup because we know that the chances of them getting a finish are greater because neither one of them are really that good within their divisions. So like Emily Wittmeyer is 4-3, Polyana Viana is 10-4. When Polyana Viana came over to the UFC, she actually had a ton of hype around her, and she was kind of touted as like one of these next women in this sport that can really go on a run. And she's dropped 3 in a row. So like she's dropped fights to JJ Aldrich, Hannah Cyphers, and Veronica Macedo. She even got submitted by Veronica Macedo, and Polyana Viana's the world champion in jiu-jitsu. So it's almost like maybe she's like lacking the mental strength within the cage. What's missing? Because she should be going out there and really putting on a clinic. When it comes to Emily Wittmeyer, who's 4-3, she's kind of like alternated wins and losses in UFC. Didn't have really the best showing on the Ultimate Fighter. Lost to Roxanne Modafferi. Lost to Jillian Robertson. Got a nice win over Alexandra Albu. A nice rear naked choke. Spun around her really quick. But then when you thought that she kind of really turned a corner in her career, she just got choked out by Amanda Ribas. So the inconsistency for both of these fighters is crazy. And I think that is why, like, usually like the female fights, it's like 2 out of 3 fights that goes the distance. In this fight, I don't really know if it's going to go the distance, Jason Floyd, because like they're both so inconsistent that they can really expose one another. Emily Wittmeyer has great takedowns, stiff striking. Polyana Viana has good striking and is supposedly a world champion in jiu-jitsu, but she's had like little mental lapses in the sport where she's gotten submitted by people that really don't have too much accolades. So for me, if I have to pick anybody in this matchup, I'm picking Polyana Viana at 8,100 in hopes that maybe she's really turned a corner and is going to put it all together against Emily Wittmeyer.
Yeah, it's definitely something you don't feel good about. I mean,
No.
it's just there's always, you're always gonna have one fight on the card that you're just like, man, I just don't know whether I feel good about that one, but we'll see what happens. But we do want to tell you about the Awesemo DFS podcast giveaway. And here's what you gotta do: subscribe to the Awesemo channel, leave a rate and review the channel with your Awesemo Plus username or Twitter handle, and you are entered to win a free Awesemo Plus monthly pass. Winner will be announced on March the 6th, which is actually tomorrow. So it's March the 5th. Also, let you know about, if you use the promo code FIGHTER, get 50% off any Awesemo Plus weekly package when you use that promo code FIGHTER at checkout. Take advantage of that deal. But you look at the other two fights on this card. We'll get to the first fight because Pete knows my theory on the first fight, even though I went against my theory last week. This is a fight we're all so different on. Emmers at 8,500, Giga at 7,700. I like Emmers in this matchup because of the wrestling. I know you're on the other side of this one.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Jamal Emmers, 17-4, he's definitely the more well-rounded fighter for sure. Has good boxing. He's good in the clinch. Has a wrestling background, so he has that in his back pocket. Has some submission wins. Going up against Giga Chikadze, who's 8-2. Unbelievable striker, coming over from Glory kickboxer. I think he has like 22 or 23 knockouts of like his massive like 30 wins or something crazy like that in his illustrious kickboxing career. So this is an old-fashioned striker against well-rounded grappler. So for me, like, I was watching and digging and doing some research, and Jamal Emmers, he doesn't really stand out in any one particular area. The one fight that did stand out for me was on his performance on the Contender Series, and he fought somebody that we know pretty well in Julian Erosa. And Julian Erosa is a very wild, unpredictable, kind of like a herky-jerky type of style. And Julian Erosa actually had some real good success against Jamal Emmers. So, like, Jamal Emmers has good offensive striking, but his defensive striking is somewhat lacking, where he gets caught with shots and you're like, dude, what do you like? He's getting clipped with certain shots from Julian Erosa getting lit up. And then he's winning a fight and Julian Erosa head kicks him and knocks him out and finishes with ground and pound. So now I'm sitting here and I'm looking, and both Jamal Emmers and Giga Chikadze were both, booked to fight back a couple weeks ago. And not each other, but they had different opponents. So Giga's been in camp. Giga just took this fight on short notice, but it's not like he hasn't been training. He just went a whole camp with Beneil Dariush and the guys at Kings MMA preparing him. So, like, he has great teammates. He has great coaching staff. In his fights in the UFC, though, like, he was taken down by Brandon Davis, and he was controlled and mounted by Brandon Davis. And no disrespect to Brandon Davis, but like, Brandon Davis is a great striker, and he's not really known for being a superb grappler, even though he holds a brown belt. So Giga Chikadze, I would hope he's been working on his takedown defense, because if he can really stifle the takedowns of Emmers and keep this on the feet, I like his chances here. He throws head kicks, which Jamal Emmers just got finished by Julian Erosa like 3 or 4 fights ago. And his punching combinations are just so great that if he keeps it standing, I think it's his fight to lose. And I think this could be a nice little upset for him on this card at 7,700.
Can't wait to text you on Saturday night when he's scoring all these takedowns.
Hey, look, that can happen. And I'll definitely play both sides for sure. Not together, obviously, but like, Jamal Emmers is supposed to go out there and win because he holds the advantages everywhere. But Giga against the cage had some good takedown defense, even in his Contender Series fight. It seems that when his opponents get too deep on the hips, he struggles like massively, where when they're really deep on the hips, he kind of just like, all right, you got me, and he gets taken down. But when they are initiating the takedowns, he starts to really implement a hard whizzer, good frame, and he really sprawls his legs out decent. But I hope he made some strides in camp and has really been working with Dariush, because if he's been working with Dariush or Vittori or those guys at Kings MMA, he should go out there and showcase a nice high kick knockout.
Now we get to the first fight of the night.
Oh
And
God.
I have a golden rule. Now I did violate my golden rule last week. My golden rule is I don't take the first fight of the night.
Mhm.
Just because of when you lose that fight, you ultimately get into a bad mood. This is, back around 8,200, Canetti at 8,000. Can you sell me on why I should take someone in this fight?
No, I cannot. And I'm definitely backing your rule and avoiding this fight for sure. I mean, Guido Canetti comes in at 8-4. He's 40 years old. He's a southpaw, so he likes to strike and he's extremely aggressive. Going up against Dana Baccarat, coming from Jackson's camp, he's 30. It's a fight where I don't really see a finish coming one way or the other, and I think that they're priced accordingly. Where it's like I'm not really interested. I'm probably not going to spend 8,200 for Baccarat against Guido Canetti. I'd rather spend 8,100 and take Poliana Viana, to be honest. I just don't see, like, when it comes to Guido Canetti, he gets choked out a lot. And he had a great round against Marlon Vera where he looked good. He's super aggressive and he has moments. But at 40 years old, you have to think that maybe, like, these guys that are a little bit younger and coming from better camps, maybe they have something that can expose you. So, I mean, Baccarat does have some submission wins. So I'll probably have him in one lineup at 8,200 because I think he might be one of the most significantly overlooked fighters on the card. But if you tell me Guido Canetti goes out there and wins a close decision because of his aggressiveness and his striking, I wouldn't be surprised. But I'll be full fading this first fight for sure.
Yeah. For me, it definitely is a pass. But let's wrap up the show by talking about our 4 tiers. We'll start with tier 4, which is the 6K range. We only have one fighter in that, and that's Safarov at 6,900. I think we're in complete agreements. No, thank you.
Yeah, if you take him, thank you for your donation.
Tier 3, this is the 7K range. So we've got Mershart, Griffin, Giga, Magny, Close, Joanna, Hubbard, Quinones, Romero. I mentioned about Romero. I think there is some value there as a punt play.
Yep.
You look at those upper 7,000 options. I would almost say, like, man, I kind of feel like they're kind of quote unquote punt plays.
Yeah.
But Joanna and Yoel might have the highest upside.
Yeah, they definitely do have the highest upside because of the 5 rounds, because of their history, because of their output. Yoel Romero at 7,000, the value is crazy. If you really think that he's going to win that fight, you're able to take Yoel Romero and really stack up everywhere else. So definitely do that if you're believing in Romero. For me, I think that Adesanya gets it done. I think my number one in that price range would be Joanna at 7,300. And if you're backing Wei Li Zhong, obviously you're not going to agree with me, but I like Joanna at 7,300. She's a volume striker in a title fight. She's only been finished by Rose Namajunas, and she may have lost a step, but I think that she can really, in a striker's matchup, I think that she can really have moments. And she's not irresponsible where she's going to get clipped and just be wild and reckless. She's very technically sound. So I like Joanna in my lineups. And then I like Max Griffin at 7,800. That 7,800 is staring me in the face, and I kind of like it. Meerschaert would probably be the most popular 7,900 play. I understand that, but give me 7,800 Max Griffin for the upside and takedowns.
I know one of the comments here on YouTube is the Boogie Woman will reclaim her title.
That's right.
She did what she could to try to get in. She loves to play those mind games and stare down. And Wei Li just says, "Shut up, shut up, shut up." I mean, hey, it's great. That'll be an interesting stare down at the weigh-ins on Friday. Now, looking at tier 2 at 8K range, and obviously you look at the top 2. Wei Li at 8,900, Beneil Dariush at 8,700. I mentioned about Jamal Emmers. We mentioned about the female fight there early on in the night. Maybe you got to have the fighter in there. To me, I think you got to look at Wei Li as the best option because of the ceiling. The ceiling's over 100 points.
Yeah.
Dariush ceiling's 100 points. The other ones, the question is how many of them have a ceiling of 85 and above?
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. I mean, Wei Li Zhang, because she's in a 5-round fight, you could definitely say that she's probably the best 8,000 option if you think that she's going to get it done. I think that Joanna's going to have success and outpoint her. I do. I don't see a finish coming. I think Joanna's just going to outpoint her, have better cardio, and just outlast her. So I will be avoiding Zhang. Can't blame me if you take her. I like Beneil Dariush at 8,700, man. Like I do. He's a grappler. He's kind of like that. Every card I talk about, I want that Kamaru Usman, that Kobe Covington in my lineup where they're going to get those takedowns and get me all those transitions. And I think Dariush is that guy going up against Close. I think that it's going to be a competitive fight. And sometimes in a competitive fight, you're going to score more because the guy's going to stand up. He's going to, continuously move. So you're going to be racking up points. Man, I like Duran win there at 8,300 too. And I think that's because of his wrestling can negate Mearshart. He can take him down at will. He can outpoint him through volume striking. And I think Jing Liang's another guy with crazy upside at 8,600 for sure.
Yeah, and now you look at those 9K options, tier one. I love all of them, all four of them. I think they've all got the potential over 100 points. Israel obviously sticks out to you because of the 25 minutes. So to me, I think I would look at him as probably the top option just because of the 25 minutes. But look, I really like Vieira. I really like Madsen. I like O'Malley. I think it's just a matter of if you're a single lineup player, can you put two of those fighters in your lineup?
Yeah, I try to always put two big guys. Like I always try to take that stars and scrubs approach, even when I'm doing like NBA lineups. I try to get the people I want in my lineups. Like I want Adesanya. I mean, also because like I'll probably be watching the fight, so I'm going to be rooting for Adesanya. I think that his ceiling's crazy. I think his striking output's there. It's a 5-round fight, so give me Adesanya at my one. Man, I have to say Rodolfo Vieira at 9,300. He's got to be safe as they come, right? I mean, you would imagine. And then Sean O'Malley at 9,100. He's my third favorite. Madsen, I'm a little different than you. I think I can see that going a little bit longer, but I think Sean O'Malley is going to go out there and really just make another highlight reel.
But at the end of the day, I'm really looking forward to just watching these fights on Saturday night. I'm looking forward to watching these fights. I know me and you will be texting back and forth during the fights. One of the things we love to do is start screenshotting the lineup percentages, whatnot. But really looking forward to it. Pete, as always, man. It's great talking the fight game with you. Of course, you're on Twitter at Pete the Heat MMA. I'm at Jason_Floyd, and always, tweet at us, whatever you want, and of course, be sure to follow here at awesemo.com. Check out all the DFS coverage, especially from the MMA side of things. So that's going to wrap it up for the MMA strategy show for UFC 248.